Welcome to episode 5 of Sorcery 102 Beyond the Ordinary. I'm Portland Stu here with.
Bobby, also known as Ringslay on Discord, etc. But yeah, this is an exciting one, Stu. You found this
Yeah,
video a couple weeks
yeah, I
ago.
just want to.
Oh,
Yeah, so while I was at SorceryCon recently, a video popped up in my feed one night while I was trying to get some rest for the next day's round, and it was from one of my favorite content creators, the ArchiveKeeper. And I think it was something called like In Defense of Complexity in Sorcery or something like that. And it was really a very poetic, short video about why the complexity of this game is actually a good thing and sort of, yeah, like he covered so many beautiful points. And I immediately sent it to Bobby and I was like, I feel like we could make a video digging in deeper on sort of what this touches on.
yeah, I totally. And immediately when I watched it, I was totally in agreement. It's a beautiful love letter to sorcery and how the how the complexity of the game is intentional and not a problem. It's a good thing. It leads to a bunch of good, positive things. I totally agree. It's good for everybody that it's complex, and definitely we're gonna link his video. Definitely go watch that because it's really great, and follow ArchiveKeeper as well. They put out great content for sure. So I think that like when we were talking about it, the main point that they're trying to make seems to be the complexity of sorcery provides a lot of space to work in, both deck building and gameplay wise. And it can be a barrier to entry, but that depth and complexity really creates openness and rewards dedication and thought. So they define complexity as the amount of processing required to understand the current state of the game and make decisions to give you the best chance of victory. And they define depth as how different each game feels, or how it can be each individual game of sorcery feels different because of sights and the spells and all the different pieces. They come together and create a varied experience. So you're not playing the same cards every single time. And there's a lot of stuff around complexity and depth here. So, um, did you have more thoughts on either of those points, Stu?
Yeah, well, maybe let's bring up our TTS game real quick
Oh yeah,
because I think it sort of starts to show like even just looking at this board state where we're playing a little game with the old OG alpha precons, right? Like if this were a game of Magic, it would be like, oh, you have two creatures, I have one creature, like we have some spells in hand that might do stuff, right?
yeah. If we
Uh,
set it like a magic game, right?
yeah,
Yeah. lands, creatures.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Like I
that's
could
really
attack you for 3 and you can't block, and
yep.
the like that, and like maybe
Exactly.
you'll have a spell, maybe I'll have right. Like it's all mystery. Like nothing's on the board. All the complexity is in the like possibilities, I guess, of what we might have in our hands. But if we lay it out like a sorcery game, like if this is Bobby's turn, Bobby has to recognize that there's an updraft ridge here, which gives Boon Pegasus +1 motion. And I have the Avatar of Air, which could step over and throw the Pegasus, and then the Pegasus could come all the way to here quite easily. But also, if Bobby were to move forward with a minion, then I could step forward and throw the minion into the bottomless pit. Like Avatar of Air is a great avatar for sort of showing all that. But at the same
For
time,
sure.
I have to think about if I throw my Pegasus forward and try to attack, thinking I'll kill the cave troll or something. Oh, but the Avatar of Earth could actually block and has 4 power right now, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an untapped avatar.
This,
Like,
yeah, and like you don't know, but I have a bury in hand, so why don't you just go ahead and bury your Pegasus or whatever, right? So
yeah,
there is the old single dimension of complexity that we're used to from Magic, but it's also the additional three-dimensional complexity of above and below sites and each grid space and all the different keywords on minions, and there's just so much going on. Every site has a ability, and every site has a threshold and mana, and there's just so many different pieces to always be keeping track of in
yeah,
the game, and the complexity gets out of hand really quickly. So I think about chess is a little bit of an interesting example in terms of complexity, because you start a game of chess and they say that the first 10 or 11 moves of the chess game are um, like they're basically set in a lot of ways. Like they're kind of responses to each other's pieces and things, and then eventually it becomes like down to a unique game on like move 12 or move 13 or something like that. And I think that that is kind of what you get into with sorcery. The more pieces that come out, the more um, sites, the more spell, everything just moves closer and closer and closer to a unique game. And I think that
yeah.
every game ends up being unique in the end, and that's really cool.
Well, and it's like I don't know because we've talked about this before. I'm a Go player, and like when Go players compare Go to chess, we talk about how like chess is a game of elimination and Go is a game of accumulation where you start with an empty board and build to a full board rather than
Mhm.
starting with a full board and building to an empty board. Like sorcery is a game of accumulation where like every turn the complexity of the board can increase, right? Like even like when I place this tower, right, on my turn, like if I had placed the tower forward, I could like this builds an entirely different board than this or this, right?
Yeah, like it's a
So
very
like
different. And you're talking about reduction versus construction, but like it's both. That's the
yeah, oh yeah, because you're eliminating pieces, but the realm is built so like but you even eliminate pieces like the sites can be destroyed, like
yeah. You can like you're building a Go board with your sites, and you're playing a game of chess on top of your Go board or something like that.
it really I think that's true. Yeah, it's kind of like Go and chess. um yeah, and then I think we also like I think Archive Keeper touched briefly on this that like how deck building is also so much more complex in sorcery, partially due to the rarity limits, right? Whereas in Magic, you're gonna build a deck where you're probably running a four of all of the key cards for your combo or for your tech. But in sorcery, because you can't run four copies of your best cards, like the deck building possibilities are so much more diverse in the way that each avatar makes a deck play differently.
Yeah, it's and then the the mana requirements, the threshold requirements, the deck building restrictions for ordinaries, elites, exceptionals, and uniques, and then also take into consideration how your spell deck interacts with your site deck and how your Avatar interacts with both, and there's just so many different levels of how those things. And then you've got to think about what kind of nonsense is my opponent going to be up to, and there are some things that are just kind of obvious, right? Or like maybe they seem obvious once we've now that we've been into it, but like bottomless pit should be in your Avatar bear deck. That's kind of
Yeah,
obvious in a lot of ways, but like there are so many other decisions beyond that because bottomless pit is an elite, and you only get two of them, and you need to have 30 sites, and there's no threshold on it. So like that power is amazing, and it causes limitations. Um, and there's just so many decisions around that constantly in deck building of sorcery for sure. Yeah, so I have some notes here on uh, how and why gameplay is complex. I think we touched on a bunch of these, but how the realm is created by playing those sites, how each game piece interacts with the realm. You have two separate decks: the site deck, the spell deck. And then you have all these different things to manage your hand, your resources. both mana and threshold, understanding the capability of your deck, your opponent's deck, the elements and your opponent's elements and their avatar, understanding the limitations of both yours and your opponent's deck. There's just so many pieces that go into the complexity of sorcery, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And one of the things that I think that that complexity points to is we've talked about a lot about like how, or there's something a discussion that comes up pretty often in our Portland area group is how has this game not been invented before? It seems so simple, but also it's so revolutionary at the same time. So, um, I think it's partially because no one's been gutsy enough to have all that complexity. But
Yeah,
uh,
it seems so complex that people wouldn't want to play it, but actually we love playing it because it's so complex.
yeah, and it's a barrier to entry on some level, probably. I can't imagine playing Sorcery as my first TCG.
Hmm.
Like, if you don't have some background in Magic or chess or I don't know, some high strategy game like that, I can't imagine that this would be something that you would enjoy as your first TCG.
Although I
Like,
do meet people who it is their first game. A lot of
really,
them are drawn in by the art. Like I feel like that's a story I've run into a few times is people who are just like fell in love with the art and were like, okay, I want to play a TCG. This is cool art. Like,
that is so cool. That is
and
so beyond my experience. But that's really cool. I'd love to hear that.
yeah,
That's
and it's
awesome.
hard for them. Like I've taught. I can think of a couple new players who I've taught, and it's like, oh, it's double hard when you don't have that like baseline of having played other TCGs to work off of.
Yeah, yeah, because it really does build on what Magic built 30 years ago,
Hmm.
and all the other games have built in between now and then. That's really cool that some people are diving into this as their first TCG. Hopefully, our community can be welcoming enough to continue that because I it's that's an amazing feat given how complex this is. But anyway, um, yes, those are some of the ideas on what how gameplay is complex. But then also we touched on the deck building complexities too, and
Yeah,
deciding how you want
yeah.
to
So
yeah
yeah, deck building complexities. Like yeah, deciding how you're going to use the avatar in your deck. Deciding what avatar fits best with the deck you want to build, dealing with like all of the threshold management stuff, and sort of curating your site, your atlas for both its abilities and its thresholds. Um, like you have to curate both like your spell book in terms of like rarity limits and mana costs, like building a solid curve so that you're not losing on tempo or sort of running out of steam late in the game. You have to think about sort of, all the different quadrants of gameplay, your comeback mechanics, your finishing moves, um, what answers your deck might have, just sort of the big questions that other decks might be asking.
yeah. And we,
Uh,
we
you
talked a
know,
little bit about this before, but like the pile of uniques thing that's coming up a bunch right now, and I think that's what
yeah,
I think about when I think about those answers. Is like at SorceryCon there was a bunch of water, and um, that was a really predominant mechanic or a predominant element with lots of uniques, lots of really powerful spells, lots of really powerful creatures and minions and all that stuff. But if you're not playing those, you need to have answers to those. So that's what I think
yeah,
of when I think of that, right? Like if you're not going to
yeah,
have a Lord of Lies in your deck, you should have something to deal with the Lord of Lies in your deck because it will come out against you eventually. But
yeah, exactly.
um,
And then I think, we want to dig in a little bit more on some of these specific complexities, but first we were just going to sort of go over the sort of pros and cons of this high complexity in sorcery, because there are
yeah,
downsides and upsides.
yeah, I think we've touched on some of the cons already a little bit, but like it can be a barrier to entry. it's just there's just a lot to learn, a lot to take in. It's a really slow process potentially. It could be really discouraging to just feel like you're getting beat down every single time you play because you don't understand all the little different pieces and all the different you don't know how to
Yeah,
make those optimal plays, and it's punishing for
you
being
always
unprepared.
get wrecked by whirling blades because you haven't gotten to that point yet where you play around it.
Yeah, yeah, you've only seen seven whirling blades, but they've killed you every single time you've seen them. But the eighth through 10th you'll have prepared a little better for. So and that
Oh
kind of
no, it
goes
still
with some
kills
of
me every time.
the well, yeah, hopefully we can all learn. But yeah. Mentally draining, decision paralysis, all these things. It's just really it's challenging. And like
Yeah,
when I
yeah, the mental
first
drain is huge. Like when you play, like playing in Sorcery Con, I chose to play an aggro deck largely just because I knew I would be brain dead if I tried to play a more controlly deck for 6 rounds in a day.
yeah, we should ask CJ how he did it because or did he just
Yeah,
sleep for 3 days afterward for winning all those games of sorcery?
yeah, seriously.
uh, yeah, but then there's a ton of pros to it as well, though, which we've also touched on. But it rewards being clever and thoughtful and being prepared and being knowledgeable and knowing what's going on and having the rules interactions under your belt and knowing how your deck functions and knowing the basics of how all the different avatars and all the different pieces can function to really know and leverage those pieces. Like something that
Yeah,
was a huge level up for me. I was playing Bruce Golden Eagle before the at the beginning of the year, right after Gothic came out, and he was playing an Avatar of Air deck with Bottomless Pit, and I was playing a Savior deck, and I was avoiding his Bottomless Pit because I didn't know how that interacted. If you have a ward, it just breaks the ward, and it can stay there forever. But I was avoiding it, and then afterward, he told me, he's like, you should know how that works. And if I had known how it works, I would have won that game. But I didn't know how it works,
yeah,
so I lost that game. So it's like it's knowing those pieces can really it's rewarded
yeah.
by knowing those pieces.
Well, and even little things like I'm terrible at this, but I know a lot of players who are better at sort of like laying the traps. Like, oh, like I leave this avenue open and I haven't played my like, and I intentionally don't play a bottomless pit yet. And I, even like try and draw you into this avenue so that when you get greedy and attack in, then that turn I get to play my bottomless pit and clear the cave trolls, right?
Yeah,
And like that sort of, yeah, like you can really lay traps and like use the shape of the realm to sort of force avenues. I mean, that's another big thing with Avatar of Air, right? Is Avatar of Air loves rolling boulder. And so like having narrow avenues of attack to get your opponent sort of to forced into lining up all their guys can be really beneficial.
yeah, and that that's another level of that complexity though too, right? Is like knowing how
Hmm.
your avatar wants your site spread out, how you want your site base built. Do you want to be pushing forward? Do you want to have the L? Do you want to have the backward L? Do you want the backward line? Do you want to have like, all those different
Yeah.
pieces like really matter based on your avatar and what's in your deck and all those different things. So um yeah, it's just yeah, I guess that's really it on the complexity. We have more to add on the complexity of it because I think we've
Yeah.
we all agree it's
We've
complex. I think.
yeah, we've properly summarized and repeated all of the much more eloquently stated points that
Yeah,
ArchiveKeeper made. And
yeah.
now
We're
we've got
20 minutes
some,
in now. We
and we came up with sort of, yeah, some like topics for discussion. I think this video, a lot of the things we touch on in this video will probably be videos all their own down the road. Um, so I guess my first question to you is, do you think that the complexity of sorcery like actually leads to more diversity in deck building, or do you think it sort of rewards everyone falling into like a single like oh well the best deck is just to play water with a splash of air and everyone should just do that.
I think that the complexity and the depth of it and how it rewards deck building is counter to, or it makes me not want to play meta decks. Because I think a lot of people are going to see, oh, air water, awesome. Air water necro, air water druid, whatever it is. They're going to see that and they're going to like that shell and they're going to cling to it and they're going to learn that deck. And it is. It's a brute force powerful deck. And
Hmm.
I am sure that there are better players than me and smarter players than me that can build better decks than that. Like I know that there are the Elementalist is a really powerful deck still. Sorcerer is still really powerful. There's a player on the Summit League playing Spark Mage to great effect. There's all the avatars have really powerful aspects to them that I think that if you are dedicated to, I want to make this work. I don't want to play Lord of Lies. I don't want to play Koinixie. If that's your thing, awesome. Play those cards. They're so fun. I love playing Koinixie and Lord of Lies. They're amazing. They're so fun. They're so powerful. They're so splashy. And I don't always want to play them. So I think sorcery rewards me being clever and not just focusing on that, but knowing that that's a popular thing and knowing that it's popular, I can build my decks to beat it, to take advantage of it, to at least go
Yeah.
50-50 with it.
Well, like I saw a really interesting deck at Sorcery Con. I might be a little bit, outing someone's cool deck tech, but in these water with a splash of air decks, most of your damage is strike based because you're using grapple shot and whirling blades, which means that things like ironclad decks, which use um,
Harp.
golden harp and makeshift barricade to sort of neutralize strike damage, all of a sudden, like could actually play really well into that meta.
It
Where like
definitely could.
yeah, like an ironclad with a golden harp on it might actually just be unkillable for some of the sort of more meta decks because they don't have spell damage, right? It's all grapple shots and whirling blades to deal the death blow, and that will never work as long as the golden harp stands.
Yeah, and zap out of the collection, not going to work.
Yeah,
Uh, they're going to have to use their uh, toolbox to get a disenchant to get rid of your or to get rid of your uh, harp. They're just going to have to do something, and then they're still going to be stuck because you don't have they don't have the pieces to get through that last bit of damage.
yeah.
And
And if they get out the blasted oak, then you can't even disenchant them.
yeah, it's there's so much cool stuff and there's so much design space there for deck building. Like I think that's something that's really cool about sorcery, and I think you and I have talked about how there's a way to build a deck and then decide which avatar to play with it.
Hmm.
And there's a way to pick an avatar and build a deck around that. And I think that they both have merits. But if you build a deck and then pick an avatar, you're going to end up with one of the top five clearly most powerful ability avatars. You're going to end up with Avatar of Air, or you're going to end up with Necromancer, or Druid, or Elementalist, or whatever you're going to end up with. You're going to get to a spot where it's just there's like a even distribution of these five avatars are the best ones. They fit most decks. They have a wide breadth of possibility. But if you start with your avatar, then you actually get to build Ironclad.
Oh yeah.
And
Or our local Thorin, who did, I think did pretty well at SorceryCon with a Dragon Lord Seraphim con rule deck, and he just really fell in love with that like value engine of getting to pay 3 mana and uh, you know pull a minion out of your bin, and so it's very much a like pile of uniques style minion mid-range deck, but it tries to beat the other pile of overpowered minion decks by getting to sort of recast minions in a way almost similar to how like Archie recasts spells.
Yeah, it's that makes a ton of sense. There's value in that for sure, and that's a unexplored avenue. It's not very no one's do, no, not many people have dived too deeply into that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and many people know, you'd sit across from someone who's never seen this deck archetype and they wouldn't even like they'd kill your Morgana and be like ha ha ha, and then you'd pay 3 mana and get her back in your hand, right? And
Yeah,
they'd be
I'm
like,
like,
"Oh wait, yeah, I
oh,
guess that is what your avatar does."
yeah,
That happened. Yeah, there's some crazy, or like a lot of the Dragon Lord decks I think are sleeper cells. Like the first time I went against an Ignis Rex Dragon Lord, and they would tap to draw a land, pay 3, discard the land, and minor explosion me. And I was like, oh, so you have infinity minor explosions. I guess that is kind of what your Dragon Lord does, and I didn't quite realize that you could just discard a fire site to use this ability.
yeah, and that's amazing.
Yeah,
And I think that's what we're getting at, right? Is like all those pieces, like there's like the general wisdom is Dragon Lord probably not good, but maybe that's just wrong. Like who's to say? Build it right, build it, dedicate yourself to it, put a list together, tune it, find the right pieces, and you'll have an amazing deck on your hand, especially if you know what's in it, right? And I think that's something that I can't I can't get enough of that in my own head is how much better I play when I actually know what's in my deck.
yeah.
Because like
Well, and
if I
that,
just build a
yeah.
deck, then I don't. If I'm built a deck and I'm testing it for the first time, I play horribly. But then a deck I built
Hmm.
and tuned and tuned and tuned and played 100 games with, play a lot better with that deck.
Yeah, well, and that's something I know CJ talked on in his pre-Sorcery Con video. Is I think he called it the one-trick deck builders, like the people who really just like they're Avatar of Air players, and they always play Avatar of Air, and they build Avatar of Air decks, and like the depth of knowledge that comes from doing that is really not to be undervalued.
Absolutely not. The expertise that can be gathered there is huge.
Yeah,
All right, so that yeah, I guess my next question for you then is does this mean that any deck can be viable? Is that what we're saying?
I think yes and no. So like when at the end, right before Gothic, the last major event for Sorcery had multiple avatars make the top 8 that we had not seen make the top 8 in previous events, right? Like I think we expected top 8s to just be full of Archimagos and Druids, and like there were always those avatars in the top 8, but there were always other ones as well. And I think some of that has to do with skill really mattering, and that, a really strong player who knows their deck really well can often make it into the top 8 of a tournament, even if I might argue their deck is not actually at the same level as the other decks, right?
Yeah,
Um, so I do think and because, the rarity rules and the size of the decks. Like, there's a lot of luck in Sorcery. Like, like one of the games I won at Sorcery Con, I drew Blaze of Glory and Warp Spasm, and so was able to do a crazy play that would almost never be possible. Like the percentage likelihood of me getting this 24 damage turn that swung the game for me is so low, right? And so
Yeah, you
there's
had the right three uniques, right?
yeah, yeah. I had Horns of Behemoth and Whirling and Blaze of Glory and Warp Spasm all ready to go on the same turn, and like yeah, there's stuff like that that I think one makes any deck viable, but also like I do think that I don't think we'll ever see Witch win a major tournament. I'm sad to
No one's
say.
no one's ever gonna get to Rainbow Foil Witch, huh? Challenge
Yeah.
accepted, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, so I do think it does make a diversity of decks viable, and I do think that there's like that. I think we will continue to see top eights with like I don't think we'll get to the point where there's two avatars in the top eight. Like I think it'll always be at least four different avatars making the top eight
Yeah,
of major events.
do you think that's because sorcery as a whole it rewards that diversity, or do you think it's because we as sorcery players don't just want to play the same decks? Like, is it which is it, right? Like, or maybe we it'll probably never be able to know, but like, do you
Yeah.
have an idea?
Yeah, I mean obviously I could be very wrong about this, but I do think it is actually the complexity of the game rewards diversity. Like I think because of how complicated board states get and the different play lines and whatnot, I think there really is like gained value. Like pulling out something new is how you get the edge. And so people are going to keep trying new things, right? Like, I think the success of Druid at SorceryCon is partially because of the danger of Necro, right? And then
Yeah,
so I think there is this sort of like elaborate rock paper scissors thing that happens where like as certain deck archetypes rise, other deck archetypes come up as counters to them. And so there's always going to be like a reward to, like, I'm sure we're going to see Enchantress make a top eight soon just because of being able to main deck Drought, you know?
yep. Yeah, main deck Drought, which is amazing against water decks. Main
Yeah,
deck Sphere of Animosity, which is amazing against
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder. Just not really worry about those things. I think that's totally true. The other thing about that, you mentioned rock, paper, scissors. I think the cool thing is that sorcery is not just rock, paper, scissors. It's
Yeah,
rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, or whatever. From the Big Bang Theory,
yeah,
they have that whole thing, right? So it's in old school Magic. It was rock, paper, scissors. It was aggro, mid range, control, and this beats that, that beats this, and this beats that, and then there's maybe combo, which is like this crazy thing that can beat anything, but also can lose to anything. And that doesn't seem to be the thing in sorcery to me. Um,
yeah,
and maybe that's just we don't have enough data yet. But because of the wide variety of avatars and how they change everything, uh, a mono water necro deck is very different than a mono water ironclad deck or a mono water stager deck or whatever, right? They're
or
all just so
like
different. Or Pathfinder, yeah,
Mono Water Pathfinder is really good, but it's not running Gnarled Wendigo or Dormant Monstrosity, and it can't lean as hard on the Nixie Thin Ice / Troll Bridge combo, right? you can't run shapeshift really in mono water Pathfinder because you don't have that resource, but the resource you do have is the fast ramp, so you just are getting to your Lord of Lies sooner, right?
Yeah, and you get to yeah. There's just slightly different strategies, and that's part of why every game is unique still, right? And maybe there will eventually be some kind of perfect mono water uh, Pathfinder deck and a perfect mono water Necro deck, but I don't know if we're ever getting there. Maybe we will. We'll see. I'm still pretty new at
Yeah,
sorcery. I don't know if we've actually talked about this, but I think both of us are reasonably new. We are converts from other games after AL, right? AL came out. Neither of us saw the release of AL, but we both saw
yeah,
the release of Gothic. Um,
yeah, exactly.
so maybe we'll
I
get
know.
to
I
it in the
wonder.
future, but
I wonder if we'll have like generations at some like it'll be like, oh yeah, like I joined during AL, I joined during Gothic. Oh, I was here since Alpha. Like,
I I think we kind of will. Like, I mean, like that's the same thing
yeah,
in other games, right? Like, oh yeah, I started in
yeah,
Ravnica or whatever, right, for Magic. But like,
yeah.
I think because of the release schedule, we'll probably end up with a larger group of each generation, maybe. But yeah, so I guess the next question we were going to ask is, or I wanted to ask, is does sorcery have or need a color pie? And I think this kind of I, we talked about the color pie a little bit before, but to redefine it, it's in Magic. The design team has a color pie of in in this color it can do this type of thing. So red mana makes fire damage, and blue mana counter spells, and all those different things. But in sorcery, that does not seem to be exactly what we have. There is a little bit of fire elementalist does damage, does direct damage, and air provides movement, and or air has airborne and lots of air movement, and water has forced movement, and but there is some variation of similar effects in all different elements, right? Yeah, and it's pulled out two things perfect here. Mesmerism is the water version of take control of something, and betrayal is the fire version of something similar, right? And betrayal is arguably the fixed mesmerism, but um, they each color has access to answers for everything, and I think it's really cool that there is some division between the colors or the elements, but there is also still good answers in each element.
Yeah, and like so like one of the few except like aura removal is limited to earth and air. And technically fire has two roundabout aura removal options, which are Asmodeus and Peasant Revolt, could both in theory destroy an aura. But water has zero ability to destroy auras. Oh no, symmetric suffering. Water now has
Right.
one. So even things like yeah, so basically every element has some way of doing everything. Like I remember early on I was like, "Oh, there's no hard removal in air." And then someone showed me Chaos Twister and I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess there is kind of still hard removal in air. It's just like with a weird potential downside of you might miss the board."
Yeah, it is interesting because it the different you're right that like each element there has weak points, right? And that's also
Mhm.
okay. Like I don't think I remember when I first started playing I was kind of like, oh well, in beta there's like a one mana two power thing in each element at ordinary. That seems kind
Yeah.
of lazy. But then the more I thought about it from a game design perspective, that's not lazy, that's leveling the playing field. a little bit, right? It means that everything can be viable, and like it it seems kind of lazy on some level, but also it provides space for everything to be viable. When everyone needs a 2 power minion, everyone should be able to get a 2 power minion. Um, and especially things that are like lower impact like that. Like not everyone has a polymorph. Not everyone has
Yeah,
exactly mesmerism. That's not what we're saying. But they have effects that can be similar, like oh god, disintegrate
it just
feels like
oh yeah,
disintegrate feels like polymorph, and bury feels like drown, and there's just like these different pieces that are similar. Um, and I think that that's a good thing.
yeah, yeah. I do think it's good to have like I like that fire has the site disruption, right?
Yeah,
And if you want to play site disruption, you kind of got to play fire. And water has the forced movement for your opponent, right? And that so if you want to be forcing your opponent's minions to move around, you play water, or you play Koi Nixie and force their avatar to move, which is
yeah,
just crazy.
yep. And then yeah, like root spider is
And then
another great example
Earth
here,
is
right?
just weak. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I kid. Um,
Almost.
but Earth has the better disable effects, right? Like so, fire has Hillic Basilisk, and water has Hyper Parasite, but Earth has like Gargantula and Root Spider. So if you really want to be doing like full on, I disable your minion moves, like Earth is going to be your best bet for that.
Yeah, and you Stonegaze Gorgon you didn't mention, but is also
Yeah. Oh
Earth,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's the silence ones are also in Earth. So
Yeah.
um,
Which I do think, I mean, as a side note, I really wonder about like silence themed decks. Like, I know we've talked about this, I've talked about with a lot of people that there's like not quite enough silence and disable effects to really build a deck around it, but it does seem like a potential counter to the like OP minion strategy of water is like leaning into some sort of silencing and disabling tech.
yeah, I don't know about the not enough of them. Maybe we just haven't put them together in the right way. Like
Yeah.
there's only you only get two Sisters of Silence, and you only get one Sister Stephania. But if you put it with uh, the Gargantula and the Root Spider, and then you also put in Koi Nixie and uh, uh, Abaddon Succubus, and what's the other the 4 mana 4 power that picks up a weaker thing. You just
Oh,
mentioned
hyper
it.
parasite.
Hyper
Yeah.
Parasite. Yeah, you put that in there too. Like maybe those things all end up meshing together into something that's
Yeah. Run some
fun
silent
to
auras
play.
too.
Silence,
Unpunished.
mesmer.
Yeah. Although, yeah. And then it's fun, like the multi, like King Arthur is still, I think, one of my favorite cards to ever exist in a game. Because it's basically built for an elementalist deck. Like you can only play it in 4 color or elementalist, but then it just turns off betrayal, Lilith, infiltrate, mesmerism, like
It
hard
doesn't
counters.
turn them off. It makes them infinitely worse,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It just like makes yeah. Like Lilith against King Arthur, I did that in
Oh,
the cube draft. I played my Lilith and they had King Arthur out and I flipped their minion and they were like, "Cool, that's my minion." I was like,
yep.
"What?" And they're like, "King Arthur." I was like, "Oh
Whoops. Yeah, that maybe I mean like maybe that's the thing. Maybe you play elementalist control and you just lean water earth. You do that disable stuff. You play King Arthur. You play some of the other 4 color things. You just that
yeah,
sounds
maybe.
that sounds someone can build it. Probably not me, but
I
maybe
I'm obsessed with Elementalist. I think it's such a cool deck building avatar. Also, just like I don't know, some people just play the Elementalist unique pile too. It's just sort of like every card in my deck is a must answer threat, and so like eventually you run out of answers is the theory.
Yeah, especially if it's all trading one for one, right? And
Yeah,
so I guess that kind of brings us into one of our next topics, which is like pile of unique versus build around mechanics. So power versus synergy. Which is there one that's better? Is there one that's worse? Is it
yeah,
open to both?
yeah, and I think that's I want to do a more in depth dive on that. I know we're probably running toward close to time, but right now it feels like power beats synergy, but I don't think that that's going to stay true,
Uh,
right? Like,
I bet I'd be willing to bet that what we end up having is uh, at the beginning of each meta, when we get a new set, power is going to win most at the
yeah, you
beginning of
just
the
play
meta.
the strongest pile of cards you can put together.
And then as the meta goes on, synergy picks up. And I think that's kind of
Yeah,
from what I've seen, it's what happened with AL, right? Like at the beginning of
yeah, it's
AL,
true.
it was Archimago, most powerful thing you can do, free spells, free card draw, all these things just wrecking at the beginning of the meta. And then the synergy deck of taking advantage of Tawny, I guess. I don't know if that's synergy or not, but
Well, it is. Yeah, I mean,
it
yeah,
kind of, right?
it's easy to
It's also
access
power.
synergy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an easy to access, but it is still synergy, right? And people had to figure that out
Well,
and find that nook, find that power.
and I do think that's why a lot of us kind of gravitated towards Necro as like the first best deck out of Gothic is just Water Necro because you get to play the power with a splash of synergy and things like Gnarled Wendigo and Dormant Monstrosity and Shapeshift, where you're like using your skeletons as a resource to like synergize a little, but that's not the heart of the deck. Like the heart of the deck is just powerful cards, but then you have some synergy there, and I think we'll lean more and more synergy with time.
But I think that even in the 2 months we've had Gothic, even the Water Necro deck has pushed further from blank power to synergy. Like taking advantage of those synergistic effects is more important in the newer versions of Necro because you're using those bodies to cast dormant monstrosity in the corner. You're using that to cast your Wendigos. You're using that innate power or the innate resource of those skeletons in more varied ways and taking synergistic advantage of them, of those game pieces in a wider range of ways. And I think that even that is obviously is hugely powerful, but it's also taking more advantage of that synergy.
Yeah, I think that's true. And like back to like the AL, the tail of AL meta, like I do think got really synergy sent like the town like I'm very proud of, and I know other people were really into running the town fire druid, and just like that, like identifying that all of these exceptional fire minions were really great for handling the meta, even things like Clamor of Harpies for killing your opponent's Tawny and things like that, and getting them above rate, and just like Lugbog Cat early on in AL. Like I remember the Gen Con days, like I feel like Lugbog Cat was the Pond Cat combo just ran the meta for a little while.
Yeah, turn two
But
cat is pretty gross.
yeah.
Yeah, I, that is really interesting. Um, so what's our next question here? I guess
Oh yeah, the last one we had on the list was the Avatar first versus Shell first deck building and how that relates to the complexity of the game. Like, how do you? I think I know the answer, but what's your general deck building approach? Do you pick your avatar first, or are you just building the deck and then picking the avatar to go with it?
I tried both. It's still, I feel like I'm still too new to really be good at the shell first method. I think that maybe it's just too early in the meta for us to, in the season for us to do that. But right now, I'm just kind of focusing on Savior and building as many different ways as I can and trying to find the right build for that. And toying with it and finding all the things I can ward and make that as powerful as I can. But I think
Yeah,
that there's merit to both for sure. And I think that there's probably, and maybe this is counter to how we're thinking about it originally, or how I was originally thinking about it. But if you start with your avatar first, you're going to probably build a more synergistic deck versus if you start with your shell first, you might build a more heavily powerful deck. Maybe I'm wrong there. I don't know. Like I guess it kind of depends
it's just different
on
synergies. Yeah,
yeah. It's like your does your sight deck or does your spell deck have intrinsic synergy, or is it synergy just with your avatar? Because like when I'm building my savior decks, it's like oh that's a demon that probably just doesn't make it. It's a good card, but
yeah,
it's a demon, so like I can't play it. But yeah, there's just different. I guess it is just different synergies. So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm starting with my avatar. But what about you?
I tend to be a deck first builder. Like I've messed around a lot with Mist Shell. Like I literally just have a Mist Shell list that then I drop different avatars into it and fiddle with it, and it's very strong and does very well, with a bunch of different avatars. And I'm trying to find, oh, what's the best one for the shell? And even like I'm obsessed with the desecrate willing tribute combo. And so I've been messing around, and so that's, I feel like a lot of the time my deck building starts out with with an Atlas spellbook scenario, right? Like I think burst damage is the answer to this game in a lot of, like, that's what the nerf, like Grim Disarm was defining the game before it got nerfed, because to beat Archie, and I think to beat a lot of these more like creature control decks, you just need a way to door all at once. And finding the way to do that in the current meta, I think right now it's going to be a lot about, managing to grapple shot, desecrate, swing, or, desecrate, swing, willing tribute, swing again, right? And do
Yeah,
12, 15 damage in a turn. And so I've been messing around with different avatars for that sort of deck.
I I think that I was my first thought when you said that was Boudica, but the answer
Oh
is
yeah,
probably we need to find non-unique ones that do it to really be able to get that burst in. So that's
oh
part of
yeah,
the
yeah,
power.
yeah. That's why
Part of the power
desecrate
of
willing tribute. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
and with
That's
you
their
got grapple,
uniques.
desecrate, willing tribute, and whirling blades all kind of work really well together for trying to burst out like 3 attacks worth of damage out of ideally a 5 power minion, right? And
Yeah,
then yeah,
I mean
so
that's also a peasant deck, right? I mean that's a thing that's on the summit display right now is the peasant, right? Like you can literally build that in peasant because you have exceptionals
yeah,
and ordinaries only. And maybe that is something to. I've been thinking about that is trying to just like really force myself to build the most powerful peasant deck I can, and then allowing myself from there bring it
to
into the
edit it.
full, edit it with the elites
Yeah,
and the uniques because you're. It's so easy to start with your uniques. So easy to
it
be like,
is.
okay, well, mesmerism and I know and ruler of soul and just like all the powerful water uniques. That's so
Well, and
easy
that
to
was, yeah, that
to
was
build.
my deck building thesis before Gothic came out, was that we're going to want to build exceptional centric decks, and town was going to be really good because exceptionals a lot of times have similar abilities. Like there's multiple different charge exceptional fire minions, for example,
Mm.
right? And so you can build like a very consistent deck if you lean heavily on your exceptionals and ordinaries. But I think I was wrong basically in that the power level difference between an exceptional card and a unique card is just a little too much to try and build. Like, I don't know, I still think there's hope for like building decks around synergies and mechanics and leaning more on, like, I think Avatar of Air is a great example where it leans pretty heavily on a lot of exceptionals for its deck building right now. Things like Night Gaunts and Skirmishers, or the Skeletal Archer, Vampire, which, I mean, that doesn't feel like it's an exceptional, but it is. um,
Yeah, well, that one feels like it's a an ordinary minus because you get five of them now, right?
yeah,
The
exactly.
vampires.
Yeah.
um,
So I do think there's definitely, and like, yeah, with the volatility of sorcery, it's always felt to me that like if you could build a really consistent deck, that should be good. But I think what I'm starting to learn is that just knowing the cards really well and understanding the complexity, you sort of play around what you happen to draw, right? And if all of your cards can synergize a little bit, you can still lean more heavily on the high power cards.
yeah, that's an interesting point because like part of what we were talking about with the, or I guess that kind of points to the color pie thing, where the fact that water has kind of a direction it's going, all of the uniques kind of have synergy in that direction, um, in a lot of ways, and same with each of the other elements in fire and in earth and air. They just have they synergize intentionally internally, right? So there's like different, um, which is part of why the mono element is so powerful because it has the pieces are built to have internal synergy, um, and also the threshold thing. That's a different video probably to go into all that, but it
Yeah,
yeah. So what was I going with that? Oh yeah, so the just the fact that have internal synergy makes the deck process smoother and like have a single plan. And as long as you're moving in that direction still, and you're playing with the pieces you have in that same direction, you're gonna get there eventually. Does that make sense? Or am I just talking crazy over here?
no, I think you're very right. That like the color pie stuff is kind of like, it's not a hard color pie in sorcery, but there's sort of generalized mechanics that associate to different elements. And if you play the strong cards and sort of synergize around those core mechanics for your elements, like you don't need to play like the hard combo approach where your whole deck relies on hitting Koinixie and Thin Ice, but all of the cards in your deck kind of benefit from forced movement, right? And so like you end up hitting the River Rapids and an Abaddon Succubus, and that effectively functions like having a Koinixie under your Thin Ice, right?
Yeah, exactly. So building in those synergies makes sense. Yeah. All right. So
Yeah. Well,
I guess what are our concluding thoughts here? We're um
uh, sorcery is complex and we like it.
pretty much. And I think that to kind of circle back around to what um the archive keeper was saying in his video is like it the complexity is not necessarily a bad thing, and it we can use it to thrive. We can make this game thrive in its complexity by being diligent and paying attention and being good strategists and using that complexity to our advantage to continue to build interesting and fun decks that combat the meta, but also lean into the meta on some occasions. It's just a wide open field that does reward cleverness, but also is fun if you're playing the meta decks. So I don't know. I it just I guess my point is getting lost here, but I am really excited for more sorcery and continuing to learn more and the brewing and getting better and learning that diversity and learning how to make those synergies and powers really work together. I am not bored of this game yet. Obviously, it's only been a few months, but I don't see it. I don't see you getting bored of it with its complexity and its depth. Um, there's my one of my concerns going into sorcery was, oh, it's only one set a year. That's really great because it's we don't get over inundated with content. But I was also like, well, at some point we're gonna solve it. We're gonna figure it out. And then it's like, okay, it's March. I guess I'll go play some
Yeah,
Magic now. But like, I don't see that happening. There because of the depth and complexity of this game. I think there's an infinite number of decks that I'm gonna brew for the next 10 months until we get set 4.
yeah, it definitely wasn't the case in AL. We were seeing new decks up until Gothic came out, right? And I I believe that'll be true with Gothic as well. But I mean, right now it does feel like a few decks are oppressively strong, but it does. I don't, you know, I don't. I expect that to shift over time. Which ones feel like the strongest, even?
And hopefully we do get some kind of rock paper scissors lizard Spok thing going, right? Where we have
Yeah,
there are good meta choices, and bringing this specific deck is great for this tournament because it was full of water air necro. But then the next time around, it makes sense to bring something else entirely because the meta is full of battle mages
yeah.
or
Well,
iron treants. Or
your savior is gonna be good until it gets too good, and then everyone's gonna run 3 Order of the Pale Worm, 1 Bane of Aventus, and you're gonna be sad.
yeah, that's actually yeah. Well, that's a different video, but Duo and I have been talking about that.
Yeah, having
So
answers to that. Nice.
yeah, and it's don't always play your wards, but that's a different issue.
Yeah,
um,
I think that is a. I've been thinking about that a lot with Savior too. Like reading when you're about to, when you think they might have the Bane in hand, and like be able to play it, and then just don't ward your minions. Hopefully, you've already gotten an advantage with your wards earlier.
yeah, and there's ways to test out if they have it
Hmm.
and like, if they're wanting to break wards or if they're not wanting to break wards. And yeah, there's
Yeah.
strategy around that for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing with the Whirling Blades meta too. Is like I think I messed that up a couple times in the in Sorcery Con where I would overplay minions. It's like you want to have board dominance that is a narrow board dominance because of the power of certain board wipes.
Yeah, you gotta not overcommit for sure.
Yeah, and it's the
And
same with
that's
wards. It's like, yeah,
yeah, exactly. Because if you have 5 minions on board and you're all warded and you're like yes, and then you got them all spread out and they're like here, 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 and here, and you're like yeah, they can't get all of them with a whirling blaze or with a earthquake, and then they're like Bane of Aventus, and you're like oh, that's why I don't play that way.
well, it's been a pleasure as always. A rather rambling one, but we were just so inspired by that ArchiveKeeper video. It was fun to dig in on it.
It was, and we'll dig into each of these more in the future, I am sure. But
Yeah,
yeah, let us know your favorite complexities or your thoughts on this, or if we missed something, or if we're way off base on something. I don't know what would be way off base on, but I'm sure you'll tell us.
yeah.
And thanks thanks for listening to Sorcery 102, and we'll catch you next time.
Beyond the ordinary.